a very long time there's been intense debate, particularly in the US and Britain, about the squeezing of the middle, people on middle incomes. There's a lot of information data that go back all the way to the 1970s that show median incomes have been stagnating. So the middle classes haven't been gaining, whereas people on higher incomes and the super rich have been doing very well. How applicable is this to Ireland? Well, we don't have nearly as much data, and we certainly don't have data going back all the way to the 1970s, but from the information that we do have, it appears as if the income developments and patterns over the past 2 decades have been closer to Berlin than to Boston in Ireland. The real big change, of course, has been what's happened since the crash in 2007-2008. And the available data that we have would suggest that rather than any particular class being squeezed by the recession, it very much depends on the extent to which you've been exposed to the property construction crash in any way at all. Apart from the jobs side of the crash, there are of course other aspects of the property nightmare that have affected people in many ways. One, most obviously, is when you bought your house. So if you have purchased any time in the past 10 years, you're likely to be in negative equity, and depending on your personal circumstances, for example, if you've lost your job, then clearly people in that category have suffered most and are in the most difficult position. Other people who may have bought their houses before the turn of the century, for example, would be in a much better position. Therefore, again, in this case, it's not really a question of one social class or another social class in terms of people's net worth. It very much depends on the timing of your house purchase. This big squeeze that's affected almost everybody in the economy, some clearly more than others, is having a dampening effect on the capacity of the economy to get out of the crisis and get returned to prosperity and stable, sustainable prosperity. One of the other big impacts of the crash has been the effect it's had on the public finances, and in order to try and correct that, as we all know, there have been a whole raft of new taxes and new measures, and these are impacting on people who in many cases their incomes have declined. So we've seen big increases in taxes and all manner of charges, in addition to things like higher costs for private health insurance, higher fuel costs in many cases, and all of these are further crimping people's incomes and making it more difficult for the economy to develop its own momentum so that it can pull out of the slump that we've been in for so long. The Squeezed Middle series, to which a whole range of Irish Times journalists will contribute, it tends to look at many of the aspects and the effects the recession has had on people's lives over the past 3 to 4 years.